We're heading out into space once again. It's the final frontier, and we are joined by science engagement astronomer from the observatory, Dr. Daniel Kanema, who's here to tell us all about spider stars. Good morning, Daniel.
Morning.
Doctor, we're going to start from the beginning. Please tell us what spider stars are in the simplest way possible, please, and why do they even exist?
So basically what happens when a big star dies, so when it runs out of fuel, out of gas to make into sort of heavier elements, it goes supernova. So it makes a massive explosion. And what that supernova leaves behind is a small, dense star, about 10 or 12 kilometers across. So a really, really small star, but very, very heavy. And those stars, which are called neutron stars, they spin very, very fast. So hundreds of times a second, they're spinning. And they send out beams of light, radio light, which we can detect. So it's like looking at a lighthouse. So you're getting this blip every time it goes around. And spider stars are one type of neutron star. And essentially what they have is another star nearby, which the neutron star is slowly devouring. And that's why they're called spider stars, because they're eating their mate, essentially.
This is so fascinating. I mean, I think the big question for us here is, how are they even found?
These neutron stars that release a pulse like a lighthouse, they're very bright in radio waves. So we use radio telescopes such as Meerkat up in Carnarvon. In this case, it was detected using the Arecibo radio telescope in South America. So we can detect these pulses, these regular pulses. And from that, we can obviously infer what's going on in terms of these systems.
The first thought that came to mind when I read spider stars, I thought it's spiders shaped like a star for some reason, but clearly it's not, Doctor. Why the association with spiders, for example, redback or the black widow?
So the redbacks and the black widow spiders, I suppose the names are slightly contrived, but it's a nice way of kind of describing what's going on and defining a different sort of class of star or stellar system. So black widows or redbacks, after they mate, the female eats the male.
I'm so sorry for laughing. This is just devastating.
So now we're into biology. But essentially what's happening with these stars is the same thing. So it's a binary system. There's two stars, they're orbiting each other very close together. And the neutron star, which is the denser, heavier star, is slowly stripping the other star apart. So it's taking the gas from that star and it's bringing it onto its surface and, turning it into itself. So kind of eating up the other star. And that's why they've been called these black widows or redbacks.
Wow.
It's very interesting.
Really interesting.
Daniel, I wanted to know, I mean, I'm going to deviate here a little bit, but how often do you come across spider stars? And I assume this is not something you can see with the naked eye.
No. So as I said, you need to detect it with a very sensitive radio telescope. So something with a very big collecting area. The radio telescope Meerkat has 64 dishes, all of which are 13 meters across. So it's a very, very big telescope and very, very sensitive. They're not something you can see with your naked eye. But neutron stars are relatively common. We know of thousands of them. But ones with companions like this, and which are undergoing this process where they're eating the other companion, is quite rare. There are not many of them that have been identified. And then be able to sort of identify them and then look at them over time and try and work out exactly what's going on. It really takes a lot of effort. So it's not something that's very common.
Where to from here? What does the discovery of this unusual star mean for science?
Generally, what we're doing when we are looking at these star systems is we're trying to understand the life cycle of stars. So we want to see how stars are formed, how they evolve over billions of years, and then how they die. And from that, we can learn different things about where we've come from, the elements that make us up. So, for example, we learned just a few years ago in 2017 that all of the gold and platinum that we know of, so your jewelry your rings and whatever else, all of the gold that we have on Earth was made in an explosion of a neutron star. So neutron stars are quite interesting, and from that we can learn about sort of the quantities of different elements. We can learn about the things that make us up as human beings, and from that we can kind of understand a little bit more about the universe and how things have come to be and ultimately life.
Well, this has certainly been very interesting. Thank you, Dr. Daniel Kanema, for joining us this morning.
It's a pleasure.
And he is always keeping us up to date with all of the latest news when it comes to space discoveries.